Welcome to Listen Podcast. Today we're going to be diving into something I think we all struggle with from time to time. You know those pesky negative emotions?
Yeah.
You know that feeling when someone says something to you that just rubs you the wrong way and you just can't shake it off?
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
Yeah, and it's like a little cloud following you around all day long. And so we're going to be exploring how to deal with those kinds of situations from a Buddhist perspective.
Interesting.
Using a really insightful YouTube sermon called The Power of Nothing.
Yeah.
From the Jethavanarama Buddhist Monastery.
The power of nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
So the speaker in the video starts by painting a picture that I think we can all relate to.
Okay.
Imagine someone said something hurtful to you yesterday and you're still stewing over it today.
Yep.
It's like a mental splinter you can't quite get out.
It's so easy to get caught up in that.
Yeah. And that's where the Buddhist approach comes in.
The speaker offers a 4-step method to help us break free from that negativity.
4 steps. Okay.
The first step is what they call coming to your senses.
Coming to your senses.
Which is all about realizing that the real problem isn't what the person said,
right,
but our reaction to it.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
It's about taking ownership of our internal state instead of blaming external factors.
Yeah.
And the speaker emphasizes that true peace comes from understanding our own minds.
Okay.
Not from trying to control everything and everyone around us.
Right.
They encourage us to find refuge in the Buddhist teachings themselves as a source of wisdom and guidance.
I like that.
So instead of getting caught up in the blame game, it's about turning inward and exploring our own reactions.
Exactly.
Building on this idea of separating our reactions from external events.
Okay.
The speaker introduces the second step, which is, it's not me, it's not I.
It's not me, it's not I.
And this is where they dive into the Buddhist concept of visiting defilements.
Visiting defilements.
It's like imagining negative emotions as temporary guests that come and go.
Okay.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, I do too.
It helps to see those negative emotions as fleeting rather than defining who we are.
Right.
It's about acknowledging their presence without letting them take over.
Right.
The speaker explains that these visiting defilements arise from causes and conditions, but they're not inherent to our true nature.
It reminds me of this saying, this too shall pass.
Exactly. It's a reminder that nothing is permanent, not even our emotions.
Nothing is permanent.
And this leads us to the third step, where the speaker asks us to consider whether our problems are physical or mental.
Physical or mental?
They draw a line between basic physical needs like food and shelter and everything else, which often boils down to anxieties rooted in our minds.
That's a really important distinction, I think.
It makes you question whether our desires for material possessions
or social status are truly addressing physical needs,
Right.
or if they're stemming from deeper insecurities. It's like that saying, comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh, that's good.
We get so caught up in wanting what others have that we forget to appreciate what we already have.
Exactly.
And the speaker's point is that a lot of the things we stress about actually fall into that mental category.
Right.
They're not about survival,
Right.
but about our perceptions and desires.
And perceptions, exactly.
And this ties in perfectly with the 4th step.
Okay.
Minding your own business.
Minding your own business.
Okay. This isn't about isolating ourselves from the world,
Right.
but about being mindful of where our attention goes and recognizing our mind's tendency to get caught up in unnecessary thoughts and emotions.
Yeah.
And this is where the speaker introduces the concept of jati, which basically means the suffering we experience when we cling to the idea of a separate self.
The illusion of self. That's a big one.
It's a core concept in Buddhism and many other Eastern philosophies.
For sure.
It's like we're building a wall between ourselves and the world and then wondering why we feel so isolated and disconnected.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the heart of the sermon's title, The Power of Nothing.
Okay, I'm ready for this.
So
I want to know how they unpack this concept and how it ties into everything we've discussed so far. So how does this power of nothing actually play out in those moments when we're, feeling hurt or offended?
Well, the speaker uses a pretty relatable example.
Right.
Imagine, coming home from a rough day at work.
Yeah.
Maybe your boss was really critical or a coworker was just being difficult. And you just, you want to vent to your partner.
Totally.
You're looking for a little validation and sympathy.
Yeah, of course. We all seek comfort from loved ones.
Right.
When we're feeling down, it's natural.
Right, but the speaker points out how this can sometimes backfire.
If our partner just agrees and fuels our anger, we're not really getting to the root of the problem.
Right. It's like adding fuel to the fire.
Right.
Instead of putting it out.
Yeah.
We end up just reinforcing that feeling of being wronged.
Exactly.
Instead of finding a way to move past it.
And the speaker suggests that sometimes the best support isn't necessarily agreement.
Okay.
But a fresh perspective. Someone who can help us see the situation more clearly.
Right.
Without getting caught up in the drama.
So that's where the Buddhist teachings offer a valuable alternative.
Exactly.
Instead of playing the blame game.
Right.
It's about understanding the causes and conditions that led to the situation and how our own reactions are contributing to our suffering.
And the speaker highlights how clinging to that sense of I being wronged can lead to all sorts of unhealthy behaviors.
Right.
Snapping at our kids when we're stressed from work or taking it out on someone who had nothing to do with the original situation.
It's like those ripple effects.
Right.
We see when a pebble is tossed into a pond.
Yeah.
Our unexamined emotions can spread outward and impact those around us.
Exactly. And the speaker emphasizes that true freedom lies in understanding how our minds work.
Okay.
It's about developing the ability to choose our responses rather than just being puppets to our reactive emotions.
Which is where the practice of meditation becomes so valuable.
Yes.
It helps us cultivate that inner awareness and space to observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment,
right,
allowing us to choose how we respond.
The speaker also brings up how this clinging to a self plays out in our relationship with material possessions.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
They ask, is the size of your house really about meeting a physical need? Or is it more about ego and status?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
That forces us to examine our motivations.
Right.
Are we seeking genuine fulfillment or just trying to fill an internal void with external things?
It reminds me of that idea that we buy things we don't need.
Yes.
With money we don't have to impress people we don't like.
Exactly.
And the speaker shares a personal anecdote that really highlights this point.
Okay.
They talk about being a victim of identity theft.
Oh, wow.
And how surprisingly, it led to a sense of liberation.
That's fascinating.
You'd think that kind of experience would be devastating.
It would.
But they describe this feeling of emptiness and weightlessness.
Okay.
Like all those external things that define them, their credit cards, their address, were suddenly gone, and yet they were still there.
It speaks to the Buddhist teaching of non-attachment. It's that recognition that our true essence isn't bound to those external markers, identity. It's like realizing that we are not our possessions, our job titles, or even our thoughts and emotions.
And the speaker contrasts their experience with the lives of those who are constantly striving for more, always trying to accumulate and protect things.
Yeah.
They make a powerful statement. The asset I have is nothing.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
It is, but they go on to explain what they mean.
Okay.
They say, I have nothing that keeps me up at night.
Okay.
I have nothing that worries me. I have nothing that annoys me.
So it's not about having literally nothing.
Right.
It's about freedom from the anxieties and attachments that keep us constantly striving and grasping.
They challenge listeners to reflect on their own lives, asking what keeps you up at night.
Yeah.
Is it your children, your job, your possessions?
It's an invitation to confront those things we cling to and recognize how they might be creating more suffering than happiness.
And to further illustrate the point, the speaker highlights the irony.
Okay.
That even the feeling of having a self that's independent of causes is itself a product of cause and effect.
Wait, so we think we're these separate individuals making our own choices? But even that sense of separation comes from somewhere.
Exactly. And they bring it back to that example of feeling hurt by someone's words.
Oh.
Asking, if you're still bothered by something that happened yesterday, who is it that's feeling these things?
Right.
Where does this sense of I come from?
It makes you question that fundamental assumption of a separate self that exists continuously through time, experiencing all these emotions.
And they explain that memories aren't stored like files in a cabinet, but more like energy that's triggered by specific cues in our environment.
Interesting.
It's not that we're consciously choosing to dwell on the past, but rather those memories are activated based on conditions.
So those seemingly random thoughts or emotional flashbacks often have a trigger.
They do.
Even if we're not consciously aware of it.
Exactly. And that's where the mind's tendency to not mind its own business comes in.
Right.
Instead of simply processing information, it gets caught up in creating stories,
Yeah.
assigning blame and clinging to identities.
It's that constant narration of me,
Right.
that little voice in our heads that's always commenting and judging, that fuels so much of our suffering.
The speaker uses a great analogy to illustrate this point.
Okay.
Whatever is thought you think you were thinking, it highlights how passive the process of thinking can be.
Okay.
Those thoughts just arise spontaneously, often based on past conditioning.
Right.
And we mistake them for us.
It's a powerful insight.
Yeah.
It allows us to create some distance from those thoughts and recognize them as passing phenomena,
Right.
rather than identifying with them as me.
And that leads to an even more profound realization.
Okay.
If even the feeling of having a self intimate, independent of causes, is a result of causes, then everything in existence is subject to cause and effect.
That's mind-blowing.
It
It suggests that there's a natural order to things, a web of interconnectedness,
Right.
where everything is influenced by what came before it.
And the speaker leaves us with another thought-provoking question.
Okay.
If you're excited about something that's going to happen tomorrow, who is it that's feeling excited?
Okay.
Where does that sense of come from?
It's like they're inviting us to look under the hood of our own minds,
Yes.
to question those assumptions we take for granted about who we are
Right.
and how we experience the world.
Exactly. And they encourage us to apply that four-step approach we talked about earlier.
Right.
To analyze moments of anger, frustration, or even excitement.
Yeah.
To see how clinging to a sense of self might be adding to our suffering.
It's a practical method for cultivating more awareness and freedom in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to things, even if it doesn't always feel that way.
And that brings us back to the power of nothing.
Okay.
It's not about denying our thoughts or emotions,
Right.
but about recognizing their impermanent nature and loosening our grip on that illusion of a separate self.
So the nothing isn't really emptiness.
Right.
It's more like spaciousness.
Exactly.
Of freedom from the burden of constantly defending and protecting this idea of who we think we are.
The speaker describes it as a sense of lightness and ease.
Oh.
Like when you finally let go of a heavy bag you've been carrying for far too long.
It sounds incredibly liberating.
It is.
But I imagine it takes a lot of practice and self-reflection.
She does there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
But the speaker assures us that it's a journey worth taking.
Yeah, it really does make you think about how much we get in our own way.
It does. And you know what? I think what makes this sermon so effective is that it's not just about these like abstract philosophical concepts. You know, the speaker brings it down to earth.
Yeah.
With these really relatable examples and even some humor.
Yeah.
Which, you know, makes these complex ideas much more accessible. Absolutely. They present this path to peace and freedom, not as some, you know, rigid dogma,
right,
but as a set of tools we can use to navigate the ups and downs of everyday life.
And that's really the heart of Buddhist teachings, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not about escaping reality or becoming, you know, emotionless robots. It's about finding genuine happiness and freedom from suffering.
Right.
Not by chasing external things.
Yeah.
But by understanding the true nature of our minds and the world around us.
Exactly. The speaker reminds us that even though this path might be challenging at times, we're incredibly lucky to have access to these teachings.
We are.
And in a really beautiful gesture, they encourage us to dedicate any merit we've gained from listening to this sermon to all beings everywhere.
That's nice.
Wishing them peace and liberation.
That's lovely. It speaks to that compassionate heart of Buddhist practice.
Yes.
Extending those benefits outward to encompass all living beings, not just ourselves.
And to wrap up, the speaker leaves us with one final thought-provoking question.
Okay.
If you're still bothered by something that happened yesterday or excited about something planned for tomorrow, who is it that's feeling these things?
Right.
Where does this sense of I come from?
It's a question that can unravel so many of our assumptions about who we are and how we experience the world.
Yeah, it challenges us to go beyond just intellectual understanding and really investigate the nature of our own minds.
And it encourages us to continue on this journey of exploration, to question those habitual patterns of thinking and reacting, and to glimpse the possibility of a different way of being in the world.
A way of being that's not weighed down by anxieties, attachments, and the constant need to defend and protect this illusion of a separate self.
So to our listener, as you go about your day, we invite you to notice those moments when you're caught up in those negative emotions or clinging tightly to a sense of self. Ask yourself, who is it that's feeling this way? Where does this sense of I come from?
And maybe, just maybe, in those moments of inquiry, you'll start to experience the liberating power of nothing.
That spaciousness and ease that comes from letting go of what's weighing you down.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
And keep listening.